Hey, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the College of Letters and Sciences Ask Me Anything series. I'm Scott Carter from the college's Office of Strategic Communications and Advancement. Today, we're speaking with team members from the first-year interest groups, better known as FIGs, here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, to discuss how these courses can help you launch your academic career here on campus. I'm joined today by Assistant Dean and FIGs Director Nathan Phelps, and by Connor Steinke, a former FIGs student and current staff member with the program. Hopefully everyone is familiar with the Ask Me Anything format, but for those of you who are new to this, we'll start with brief introductions from Nathan and Connor. They'll introduce themselves and about what their roles are with the program, and then they'll provide a general overview of what FIGs are here on campus. After that, we'll launch into questions. If you have questions, be sure to post those into the YouTube chat, and I'll read those questions off to Connor and Nathan as we go along. Two quick notes before we begin today. We will be providing a closed caption version of the session soon after it's over. We also have a survey link down in the description. Please fill that out after this is over today. Let us know how we did, and please give us feedback so we can improve the next one. So with that out of the way, I'd like to welcome Nathan and Connor to our session today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll let you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about the FIGs program. Thank you again.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to join you today and have a chance to talk with you a little bit more about the First Year Interest Groups program. My name is Nathan Phelps, and I'm the director of the program. I'm a historian and a longtime teacher, and I've had the pleasure of teaching FIGs myself. So it's kind of, I come to this from a background of a faculty member. Really what the FIGs program is designed to do is to help create a more intimate learning environment embedded within a large research institution. This is a big place, full of great opportunities, and it can feel a little intimidating to students when they first arrive on our campus. And so FIGs, like some other programs that are in this series, is really designed as a program to break down some of the scale issues and to make this place feel smaller by creating cohorts of students who take 3 courses together as a group. And so each one is based on a small seminar that's taught by the faculty member who comes up with the idea for the seminar. And that person becomes kind of a mentor and guide as the students are transitioning into the university and experiencing their first semester in college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That's really what it's designed to do. So it has both an academic purpose and a social purpose, and they're both kind of co-equal in terms of their importance. So we really want to encourage our faculty to work closely with students, to get to know them, to be attentive to their concerns and interests as they're developing in that first semester. But also the courses that they're working with are also really an important part of this, and that this is a very unique environment that they're teaching in. Normally, as a faculty member, I would have no idea what my students are taking outside of my course. In this case, I know all my students from these 2 other courses, so I can actually do some really interesting interdisciplinary thinking with the students about the relationship between the 3 courses in the FIG. So my role really in the program is to help bring those faculty together, to recruit people, to think about what makes sense, what might students be interested in, and then to help build those 3 course clusters for people to enroll into in the fall.
As Scott said, my name's Connor, and I currently work with the FIGs program as a peer advisor with the SOAR program. And my freshman year, I was part of FIG 26, which was Globalism, World Regions, and Global Education. I am currently an international studies major and also pursuing an education policy certificate, and I'm going into my junior year at Madison.
Great, thanks so much for that. I really appreciate both of you joining us here today. Let's start off a little bit, Nathan. Let's ask one of the big questions right off the bat here. I know that there will be some different teaching modalities taking place this fall. I'm wondering if you could address what some of those are and how they'll affect FIGs moving forward for the fall.
This program is going to take place no matter what. We're going to be having the same program with the same outcomes, the same support. The philosophy behind it will remain the same. The difference is we've never taught FIGs in any other format except the traditional face-to-face format. So this have a remote format. So we'll have a mix of modalities. Some of our FIGs will be entirely in person. Some of them will be partly in person and partly remote, depending upon the courses that are put together. So there'll be a range of opportunities for students who are interested in either doing something that's in person or they want to do something remotely. And so it'll be a mixed mode approach this fall across all the different figs. So we have more than 60 figs, and each one has its own kind of characteristics, but there'll be a range of options.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I appreciate you talking about that issue. Let's start off with some of the basics. So when do I enroll in figs, and how do I actually enroll as a student coming to UW-Madison? When does that actually take place?
So to enroll in FIGS, it's all through the SOAR program this summer. This summer, SOAR is all online. If a student is interested in a FIG, there's information within the SOAR program itself. And then on our website, we have a form that students can go to fill out that lets them choose a FIG, and then they're authorized for that FIG, and then they are given the go-ahead to go ahead and enroll in that FIG through our website.
Yep. That's exactly right. And we send an email to a student when they submit that form indicating that their seat has been reserved in this FIG. And then when they're ready to enroll, we send an authorization email to the student that also includes very specific step-by-step enrollment guide that they can use to actually enroll into the classes. Because it's a little bit tricky because the 3 courses are actually connected together. So there's a little bit of complexity in terms of putting all 3 of them in and enrolling all 3 of them simultaneously. But it's a very smooth process, and they're just regular courses. You enroll in them the same way you would other courses. Every student's enrolling in their schedule, during SOAR, and the 3 courses that make up their FIG are just a part of their overall schedule, but they'll enroll in all those courses kind of the same way using the Enroll app that all students are trained with at SOAR.
And what's the deadline, or are there deadlines for when you can actually enroll in the FIG? Is there a point at which you can no longer do that leading up to that first semester?
So you can't enroll into any course, including your FIG courses, until you have been authorized by meeting with the professional advisor at SOAR. So students are attending SOAR throughout the summer, and as they meet with their professional advisor goes over their AP scores, their whatever their interest, talks about their academic preparation and what they want to do when they're here, and they come up with courses that would make sense. First step, and then they have to have space in the FIG that they're interested in and submit that form that Connor referenced. If they have space and they've submitted that form, they'll receive an email from us saying you're good to go, you're ready to register, and as soon as their advisor clears their advising hold, then they enroll right there. So the deadline really is just to enroll as soon as you're authorized to enroll, and to take that seat before we do actually say we want you to use that seat if you've been authorized for it, and if you don't want it, then we're going to go ahead and give that seat to somebody else. So there's a specified period of time that students have in a window to enroll into it.
And so you mentioned in your answer that advisors will be looking at some AP test scores and some other requirements. So what are there other restrictions or other requirements for some of the FIGs? Do FIGs have different requirements? How does that work exactly?
So all FIGs are regular courses. They count the same as any other course. They apply towards graduation and fulfilling requirements the same as any other course. So many courses don't have any restrictions on who can enroll into them. There are no prerequisites for most courses, but there are some, like for instance, chemistry is a very common course. Chem 103 is a very common gateway course for any student who's interested in studying a STEM discipline, for instance. That does require a certain algebra score to be eligible to take that. So if chemistry is in a FIG, as an example, the student would have to meet the math score in order to be eligible to take Chem 103. So that's an example where an advisor would say, you're interested in this FIG, but it's got chemistry in it and your algebra score isn't sufficient right now. So I'd recommend you do this other FIG, or you do something else in order to prepare for Chem 103 in the following semester. So that's an example. We have a few FIGs that are restricted to only students in certain programs or colleges. I should mention that I'm in the College of Letters and Science, and this program is hosted by the College of Letters and Science. But like the URS program and some other programs, we actually serve the entire campus community. So we allow students to enroll in FIGs who are in engineering and business and other colleges and schools. And there are some, not many, but there are some FIGs that are restricted only to students in those programs. So for instance, we have FIGs that are only available for students in the L&S honors program. And in order to be in those FIGs, you must be a member of that program to enroll. Those are identified by special yellow boxes on our website that signify which, what student population that specifically is for.
Thanks so much for that. Connor, I'm going to throw the next question to you. So Nathan mentioned this a little bit in terms of the way in which some classes, I think you said, Nathan, that classes can actually count towards major, that they can fit into your 4-year plan. Connor, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about the FIG courses that you took and how those ended up fitting into your major later on.
Yeah, for sure. So my FIG was 3 courses. It had the main FIG seminar course and then 2 linked courses. One was International Studies 101. And that was actually the very first class that I had to take in order to declare the International Studies major. So right away, my freshman semester, I was able to knock that requisite out. And then the other linked course was Anthropology 104. And that course also counted as my ethnic studies course. So within a lot of these FIGs, you're not only going to be able to explore kind of the main topic of the FIG, but you're also going to be able to work towards some degree requirements. So in my case, I was able to not only work towards declaring my major, but I was also able to fulfill that ethnic studies requirement as well.
And obviously, with these FIGs, you don't have to take them as part of a larger degree plan. Nathan or Connor, either one, do you want to talk a little bit about just how these FIGs can be used to sort of explore different ideas or different courses in your first year to just sort of curiosity and classes that you've thought about that you might be interested in, but that aren't really particular to your major. Do you know, like, how many students do that? Is that pretty typical for these classes?
So the vast majority of the FIGs that we offer really don't pertain to any specific major. They really are about exploration. The idea is every course in every FIG, without exception, counts towards graduation. Every course counts towards graduation. So they're all fulfilling, degree requirements of some kind, and that they're all going to count towards your graduation, regardless of your major, your school, or college. Vast majority of them also count towards general education or breadth requirements that all students need to fulfill, regardless of their major. So as Connor indicated, he was able to fulfill some requirements, some of which applied to ultimately what becomes a major, but in other cases applied to fulfilling a general education requirement, in this case, the ethnic studies requirement. So we try hard to actually be very careful in selecting courses that do apply, that many students would want to have, that could apply towards different degree programs, fulfilling general education and breadth requirements, so that really what you're doing is you're taking a combination of courses that are going to fulfill requirements, but doing it in a way that's more interesting to you, because they're kind of clustered around a topic that you find appealing. So for instance, nobody majors in yoga, but we've got 2 yoga FIGs, and they are designed to help have students explore this topic that's of interest to them, but they're fulfilling a literature requirement, a humanities requirement. They're fulfilling requirements, and they're doing it in a way that just appeals to them because it's on a topic that they find appealing and interesting. So that's always a great way to learn, is to learn about something that you care about, because you're going to be more invested in it, you're going to do better, and you're going to learn more. So that's really what they're designed to do, is to spark that interest by, if you're interested in, East Asian food, there's a FIG on East Asian food cultures, and you can explore that while fulfilling humanities requirement in the process.
Thanks for that. That was a great answer. Kind of leading from the question of how these could fit into a major, can these courses be used to fulfill certificate requirements as well? I mean, I would assume that they are, but Connor, I'm not sure if you pursued a certificate or not. And maybe you can, for prospective students who are you can talk a little bit about what a certificate actually is here at UW-Madison. I feel like that's something a little bit unique to our campus.
Yeah, so my FIG didn't have any courses that did fulfill a certificate, but I would, just kind of building off that last question, I would say that, just taking a FIG for the sake of being interested in that topic can still open a lot of doors. When I first chose my FIG, I was definitely pretty interested in kind of just that international studies. But through my main FIG seminar, I was actually introduced to the Educational Policy Studies certificate. Maggie Hawkins, who teaches the main FIG course, actually brought in all sorts of speakers, and one of the speakers was from the education policy program. And kind of through that, I was able to learn about the program, and eventually I went on to declare and fulfill that certificate. Certificates are a little unique to Madison. We don't have minors, so they kind of replace the minor, and they're about 15 credits usually, and able to kind of supplement a major and give you the ability to explore something that isn't so uniquely tied to your major, and kind of broaden your senses a little.
Thanks. Thanks for that. So we had a question come in.
I'd add one thing there, just real quick to that. because I think it is fascinating. And I don't know that we're unique in offering certificates and not having majors, but I personally taught at different institutions and been around the higher education for quite a while, and I don't know of any other institution that doesn't offer minors as we do. In some ways, they're equivalent, and I think we often use the kind of shorthand that it's like a minor. But I think one thing that's really substantively different, qualitatively different about a certificate is that, with a few exceptions, primarily in the languages, a German certificate is just a smaller version of German than the German major, for instance. But for the most part, they are interdisciplinary. They're not just watered down versions of a major. So typically, if you're a political science major, you might take 30 hours. If you're a minor, you take 15 hours. It's just fewer hours of the same discipline. But a certificate is actually usually pulled from different departments, even across different colleges and schools. So you're pulling together an interdisciplinary body of work around a topic, which I think is a really fascinating model, and that it's truly an interdisciplinary program as opposed to just a watered down version of a major. So for the most part, our big certificates are all very interdisciplinary.
Thanks very much for that. So we had a question come in. If one of the courses in a FIG is already full, does that mean I can't be in that FIG? I haven't reserved a spot in any particular group quite yet. So in this case, what should the student do?
So the answer is, so when we're building a FIG, we actually work with the departments of all 3 courses to reserve an even number of seats. The typical enrollment in a FIG is 20 students or fewer. So we have at least 20 seats across all the different sections that are reserved. So even if that course appears in the Enroll app, what students are looking at in terms of course capacity, it might appear to be full. We have adequate seats for all the students in the FIG because we've reserved that. So some departments will lower their enrollment and we'll just authorize students into those seats because those are being held for us. So it's never the case that there are seats in some parts of the FIG but not others. We have a cohort built where all 3 are built into one enrollment package. So essentially they're all linked together. So if there's room in the FIG, then there's room in all 3 courses in the FIG.
And so you just mentioned that, so in some of these larger classes, there are about 20 or fewer seats reserved. So is that typical for all of the classes within the FIG? Maybe you can talk a little bit about exactly how those actual classes work.
So generally speaking, at UW-Madison, if we have a large course, and there are exceptions, but many of our large courses have smaller sections that meet every week. So like for chemistry, they have both a lab and a discussion in addition to lecture every week. Those labs and discussions are smaller groups of students, usually about 20, 22 students in those labs and discussions. That's true of most large lectures at UW. There's a discussion section or a lab section or both that meets every week. What we would do is, if this is a linked course to a FIG, the main seminar course in a FIG is only the people in the FIG. It's 20 students or fewer. There's nobody else in there. It's just a small seminar just for the students in the FIG. But if we link it to a larger course, we'll say Chemistry 103, then we would all be in the same lecture. Every student would be in the same lecture, and they'd also be in the same lab and discussion. So they would be the same small pull-out group each week, would only be the FIG students. So the FIG students would all be together. If you're in Anthro 104, as Connor was, the discussion section of Anthro would be reserved just for the FIG students. So they'd be in the lecture with other students who aren't in the FIG, but when they'd meet each week for their discussion, they would only be with their other FIG students. So the idea is that they can really carry over that conversation from their other classes into those discussion sections.
Thanks. So sort of leading from that, once you get enrolled into your FIG, now what? Well, what should the student do to prepare? Or is there anything, are there special sort of things information that will be sent to students before they get into their first classes?
I strongly encourage the faculty who teach FIGs to reach out to their students prior to the start of the semester. So I think it's very common that students will receive communication from their FIG instructor, kind of welcoming them and talking a little bit about their excitement about the fall and seeing if they've got questions and so forth. But because these are just regular courses, they start when the semester starts. So they'll start the first week of September. And there's no expectation that there's any pre-work being done in these courses. So it's just like enrolling in other courses, the difference being you're going to have familiar faces in 2 of your other classes on the sidewalks and so forth, an opportunity to study together, to go to class together. But really the work begins when the work begins for all students. But there typically is some outreach from the instructor, knowing that these are all first semester students and that there's a small cohort of them. So yeah, typically you'll receive an email in advance.
Great. Connor, do you want to talk a little bit about that for yourself? Like when you first signed up for this, what were those first couple of classes like for you and the lead up to it?
Yeah, so like Nathan said, my FIG seminar professor did reach out to us right before classes started, and so we did get to know her a little more, and then kind of leading into that first week of classes, I think like the very first class I went to was actually the FIG seminar class where we kind of had introductions to everybody. And then, so when we moved into those bigger lectures later in that first week, you know, we already kind of knew each other's faces, and we were able to move together and get to know each other a little more. I think that was pretty typical of a lot of people who have taken other figs that I've spoken to. That that first week is really focused on getting to know these other cohort of students who you're going to move with and spend a lot of time that very first semester with.
And what about the courses themselves? I mean, it sounds like some of the courses are actually larger lecture style classes that other students are taking, but that sort of core class, the sort of primary FIG course, can you talk a little bit about how that class differed from the other classes you've taken at UW? Or were there extra requirements for it? I mean, did you think it was more difficult or more challenging? Were there extra assignments that you had to complete as part of that?
So for my FIG, which was the Globalism, World Regions, and Global Education FIG, I would say that seminar class was a very unique class. So it was a seminar, so we were kind of given a lot of information. The professor brought in a lot of speakers from not only from different departments within the university, but also from the community. And I would say that we kind of had a lot of unique experiences. I remember towards the end of that first semester, because we were focused on kind of world education, we actually got to take like a trip to one of the Madison elementary schools, and we spent the afternoon there kind of exploring some of the programs that they offered and how they were kind of working towards a more culturally aware program within this elementary school. So, you know, there's a lot more hands-on activities within these figs, which I think is really unique, and also you're able to combine some of the elements that you're learning in these big lectures. Um, yeah, and I'd say that it definitely wasn't something like it wasn't more difficult or more assignments or anything to that effect. If anything, like it was more focused on actually, you know, learning and being able to experience these things rather than kind of the theory behind them that you were learning in the other classes.
Great, thanks. You mentioned that you actually did sort of an off-campus trip. Connor and Nathan, if you could both speak to a little bit. Are there other sort of outside or extracurricular activities related to this? Are there, and sort of the field trip or field work opportunities, research opportunities like that that may be associated with these FIGs?
Yeah, I mean, there are a wide range of approaches that people use, again, depending upon the discipline and their own interests and outside of class that in some way ties back to what's the course content is about. And I strongly encourage people to take advantage of the fact that they've got a small group of students. There are some resources that we can put into helping them take students here or there. We have people that take students to Chicago, to Milwaukee, to various locations around the city. There are social events that people have. A lot of, we have faculty who have the students over to their home for dinner. I mean, there's a variety of things that take place to build community or to connect students to resources. We have a FIG that's regularly taught on primate behavior. He has a relationship with the Madison Zoo, and they go and work with primatologists at the zoo here in Madison as well as the Milwaukee Zoo. So they do work in both of those zoos. So examples like that. And part of it is that they really are trying to immerse these students in, this is a research university, and there are so many research activities that are going on. So a lot of them will piggyback, their own, that have the students kind of piggyback on their research as a part of their FIG, just to introduce them to some of the things that primatologists study, as an example. Connor's FIG is being offered this fall, and it's being offered almost every year. So I mean, examples like that, many of these are returners. So Maggie's back this fall. She'll be teaching her the same FIG, same combination of courses. So it's pretty exciting to see a lot of returners, and a lot of the faculty really love it because it's a fun opportunity to do things with their students and to enjoy, kind of spending that time together is really important part of the kind of the personality of a lot of our faculty.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing to that, besides the experiences within and during the first semester FIG itself, I know a lot of the FIG professors will open up opportunities beyond that first semester. So I know that the Rainforest FIG usually has that study abroad program that first winter, and within in my FIG, we were in the process of planning a study abroad program to Kenya to work with some schools there. I mean, some things happened throughout the semester that kind of put the squash on that, but we were planning on that, and I know that those have been conversations that at least Maggie has had, and I know that a lot of the other FIGs kind of work with programs that work beyond just that first semester too.
Absolutely. One of the things I look for when I'm working with faculty who are interested in teaching a FIG is if they are a person who teaches other courses or have other opportunities for students to take advantage of after that semester's over. And one of the things that a lot of our FIG faculty take on with their eyes wide open understanding is that they may be a person who's going to be writing letters of support, that's going to be kind of advocating on the part of these students, because a lot of the students here don't know anybody on campus yet, and this may be the deepest relationship that they have with a professional on campus. So that's kind of a responsibility that I encourage people to embrace and use that opportunity to really help steer students, in towards the resources that they need or the interests that they have.
Great, good. Thanks so much. One question I had that sort of came up for me is, so are the professors themselves that are involved in the FIG, are they actually proposing the classes? How actually are they developed? And to think a little bit behind the scenes, how are they coordinated between the 2 or 3 different departments or colleges?
You broke up just a little bit, so I think I understood the end of that question, but the relationship between the 3 instructors that we're saying?
That, and I mean, also, are the classes themselves, are the FIGs, are they proposed by you and the FIGs team, or are they proposed by the professor themselves?
So every FIG is taught by the faculty member who proposes the FIG. So I don't go to anybody and say, I want a FIG on this topic. So, I mean, I think that's partly what makes this model really work, is everybody's a volunteer. The people who are teaching FIGs are teaching them because they want to teach them. They want to work with first semester students on the topic of their choosing. So the topics are all selected by the faculty. Now, I do sit down with them and think about maybe ways we can tweak the proposal a little bit to make it a little bit more appealing to a broader range of students, or to open up the subject a little bit more widely if it's something that's very, very narrow. So that's kind of an iterative thing. We go back and forth, but the ideas always come from the faculty. They make the proposal to the program, and then we work with them to think about what would make sense in terms of linking the courses, that would be best suited to this topic. So there's a kind of a process that we go through with them, but the ideas always come from the faculty.
And so I think you've mentioned this before, but so there are about 60 or so FIGs that take place. And another question, just to sort of add on to that a little bit, that's related at least, are they just for the fall semester, or do the FIGs span the entire first academic year?
So each FIG only lasts 1 semester because the courses just last 1 semester. So they're just regular courses. So most of our FIGs are offered in the fall, and that's when most students start at UW-Madison. So these are for students in their first semester. And since the largest cohort of new students is the fall cohort, they're primarily a fall program. So most FIGs all FIGs will end in 1 semester, but most FIGs are offered only in the fall. But then we have different FIGs that are available in the spring. We have fewer of them, but there are new FIGs that are offered in the spring. The difference is that in the spring, there are only 2 courses that are linked together. We do that because it's hard to find combinations of 3 courses that students want or need as they begin to accumulate more credit hours. So they're a little leaner, they're only 2 courses, and they're open to any student. So if you're a transfer student, a returning student, if you're interested in those 2 courses and they make sense for you, academically, then you're welcome to enroll. So it's not just for first semester students after the fall. So the spring FIGs are a little bit different in significant ways in that way.
And Connor, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about just the breadth of the types of FIGs that are offered that are out there. You talked a little bit about your own experience in the one that you took, but when you're talking to students, how do you help them sort through all of the opportunities that are available?
Yeah, so like Nathan said, there is a very wide variety of FIGs. I mean, anything from yoga to rainforest. There's things on literature and art. and there's engineering focused ones. And I think that the main thing is just what a student's interested in. I mean, what do they want to spend their first semester really focusing on? And that synthesis of information between, you know, all the courses in the FIG really allows them to get a deeper understanding of whatever topic, you know, they end up choosing. But, you know, on our website, we have a list of all the FIGs, and just I mean, we have FIGs that cover every topic in every department, in some capacity, within Madison.
And so can you tell me just a little bit more, we can go into a little bit more depth about what your role is, or and what you actually do there, in terms of in your actual relationship to the FIGS program? Like, so if a student comes to you, what does that actually look like? Sort of a one-on-one session with you?
Yeah, so with the SOAR program, I'm a peer advisor. So basically, I'm here to answer any question a student has on FIGS along any step of the process. So if a student is just, you know, at that, you know, very early interest level of, oh, I don't know if a FIG is right for me, or can you tell me a little more about it? I'm here to walk through that process and you know, begin that exploration of, you know, what are you interested in? And, you know, what are you looking to get out of your first year at Madison? What are you hoping to work towards in your academic career, all the way up until enrollment? And, you know, enrollment problems, how do we enroll? What are the steps to do that? And anything in between, really. So any question that a student has about FIGS in any capacity, myself and the other FIG SOAR peer advisors are there to help. And this summer, with SOAR being all online, we're doing one-on-one sessions. So we all have appointments that in office hours. So a student can schedule an appointment with any of us. We have availability all throughout the day, from the very early hours all the way into the evening hours. And you know, they can schedule any time that works for them. We're always available. And we just have 20-minute sessions that students can come and we can just have a conversation about, you know, what's going on, what are they interested in, what questions do they have, and how can we work through that.
What happens if during the semester, and Connor, I'm not sure if this was something you would have to deal with, so Nathan might be able to better address this, but if say if it gets into a month or so or a couple of weeks into the semester and has to drop a class for some reason, what happens at that point?
So the courses that when you enroll into a FIG, the courses actually are all co-requisites. It's basically just meaning we've connected the enrollments in the 3 courses together. All 3 courses, the specific sections that are a part of that FIG, and they have to be in all 3 courses. And in order to drop, they have to drop all 3 courses. So they're either all in or you're all out. And that's because we really want to have even enrollment across the 3 sections that we've reserved. But more importantly, because the faculty member teaching the main FIG seminar is operating under the assumption that all of their students are in these 2 other classes, and they may be referencing that content. They may incorporate that content into their course. So we want students to have that common experience. However, it's possible that a student might end up partway into the semester, for perfectly legitimate reasons, really needing to think about dropping one of the 3 courses. And so what they would do in that case, and we explain this when we send them the information about the FIG, is they would talk to me. Essentially, they would talk to the program director or my assistant director, Carrie Fernholz, and we would talk to them about the situation, and we would figure out a solution to this, to the situation, including potentially breaking up the FIG and allowing them to drop one of the courses. Fortunately, this rarely happens. It's rarely necessary, because usually there are ways, especially if we know early. And one of the things about being in a FIG is there's someone sort of paying attention to your academic progress, and there's somebody who can work with you. So generally speaking, we can nip the problem in the bud and take care of it and get some resources to help that student. But if there's something that needs to be addressed, we'll work on an individual level, and I'd just be happy to meet with that student and talk with them about
it. Connor, I wasn't sure if you had anything, if this was something that you have to deal with, if you've talked to students through those sort of situations before.
Well, this is my first summer with the FIGS program, so I haven't dealt with that first semester, but I know, like Nathan said, that it's not too typical that students have to break up that FIG moving into that first semester, but there are options that we can explore if that needs to happen.
Nathan, I'll propose this, or I'll send this one to you. So without I guess, giving away, or trying to, I guess, promote any one fig over another. I mean, what are some of the more interesting or your favorite figs that you've seen over the years since you've been directing this program?
Well, it's like having 60 children and asking me to choose between them. Yeah, I think it, so for me, some of the ones that are really fun are ones that I know the instructors well, and the instructors are returning, and I kind of have a sense of what they do with students. And in many cases, they do really fun things with students. So there's a woman who teaches a FIG almost every year. She's not teaching it this fall due to some other responsibilities she had to take on administratively this fall, but I expect she'll be back the next fall. But it's on Italian food cultures, and she is passionate about Italian cooking and Italian food. And she brings students to her home. They have a garden, so it's connected to a horticulture class and to an Italian language course. So the students are taking first semester Italian, where they're reading that has a lot of food in it. And then they're in a horticulture class where they're fulfilling a science requirement. They have a separate garden plot in the Eagle Heights garden that's just Italian vegetables, where they're actually growing Italian vegetables. So they're working with their horticulture class on learning about growing these vegetables. They're harvesting those vegetables, and they're using recipes from their Italian language course to make food in their main FIG seminar in the Babcock kitchens, as an example. And she takes her students to Italy and Chicago. They go to different Italian restaurants. They go to the Working Men's Club here, the Italian Working Men's Club, to meet Italians in an Italian neighborhood near Madison. So it's very interesting. There are many FIGs like this. Connor had mentioned the rainforest and coral reefs FIG. She has historically taken students to either Belize or Ecuador each year as an extension in January. So a lot of interesting, work that they do. We had a FIG this past fall where they did a lot of work collecting like water samples, where they're wearing hip waders and getting into the river and doing lake sampling and so forth as part of a biology FIG. So a lot of them that do really interesting hands-on stuff, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Many FIGs do interesting things like that. I think some of the more interesting ones are where you kind of really connect disciplines together in interesting ways. So we have one that I mentioned before on primates, primate behavior, connecting psychology and animal biology. So the students are studying animal biology. They're learning about physiology of animals and so forth. They're learning about human psychology, but then in their FIG class, they're bringing it all together. So, maybe they're studying parenting behavior in their psychology class, but then he'll talk about the macaques that they're studying and how their parenting behavior is either similar to or different from humans. So it's really the interdisciplinary thinking that makes it, I think, really exciting.
Thanks so much. And that sort of leads into another question in terms of, I'm as a staff member over in LNS, always wanting to push the Wisconsin idea, and how this is obviously a state university and very dedicated to as the Wisconsin idea being the boundaries of the campus being the boundaries of the state. Are there FIGs that are directly related to sort of Wisconsin itself? I think you mentioned one with waterways and some other sort of scientific work. Are there FIGs that are sort of directly related to that happen every so often?
Absolutely, we have always a number of them, and I think the idea that you're referencing there, the Wisconsin idea, really is in the DNA of this place. And I think a lot of our faculty really have embraced that notion that what we do inside the University of Wisconsin should apply to the world around us and should make the world a better place in various ways. So this is pretty widely done in many FIGs. One I'll just highlight that's a new FIG that I think is really exciting is called Listening to Land. And it's actually about Native American attitudes toward the land and understanding our relationship as humans to this place, the place that we live in, and our ancestral place and so forth. It's connected to Ojibwe, which is a native language native to the state of Wisconsin, and spoken by many of the tribal groups that are still federally recognized and located in northern Wisconsin. So this is one that's focused specifically on Madison, on this place. So it's really very much a Wisconsin one, and it's looking at the geography of this place, at the language of this place, and at the native traditions of this place. So that's an example of a, kind of a really great, and they're going to be reaching out to various leaders, tribal leaders, and people from the different tribes in the state. There'll be native students hopefully enrolling as well, who bring different traditions from the state of Wisconsin into that class as well.
And so then after the FIG ends, Connor, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about this. I'm not sure if your program offers sort of advising for those next steps, how to continue down the path that you sort of started and gotten interested in the FIG itself. But Connor, I'm wondering if you could talk about, what was it about the program that made you want to join as a peer advisor afterwards? I know those are sort of two different questions a little bit, so you can, Connor, maybe you can speak first to how you became involved as a peer mentor and what made you decide to do this after your experience in FIGs.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed my experience with figs. I actually heard about figs from someone a year ahead of me, who also only had good things to say about figs. I just personally believe that they're a really unique and powerful program for students going into that first semester for a variety of reasons. I think that, they're a good way to kind of explore some interest, to get to know some faculty, to make some friends along the way, and also to work towards some requirements. So it's kind of a package deal of really starting your career, your academic career off at Madison on the right step. I had worked as a peer advisor with Cross College Advising Services and wanted to specialize a little, which is why I chose to return to the FIG program, where every day I get to talk with students about how awesome they are and how they can be a great experience in that first semester.
Thanks. And Nathan, maybe I'll turn the other part of the question over to you. So after a student's completed the FIG, what can they do next? What have you seen students do in the past to continue expanding on the curiosity and knowledge that they gained through the classes they took?
Well, so there are, small opportunities like Connor was just saying to continue working the program. All the peers that work with us are all former FIG students. So we only hire people who've formerly been with the program. But, more generally, some students take another FIG. So we do offer spring FIGs, as I said, and there'll be students who will take those. And many of the students who enroll in spring FIGs were fall FIG students or even from the previous year. So that's one thing, is they can actually take another FIG. But I think that, what we find is on their own, a lot of students will begin to continue to enroll in courses together because they've built these relationships. And so we'll find that, 7 students from this FIG took the same section of Econ 101 the next semester. And, 4 of them took this other class together. So they kind of create their own little mini cohorts that continue to go forward. Some of our faculty continue to actually reach out to students and host events that are informal events that will continue, the next year, the following year, and, actually all 4 years in some cases. There are faculty members who actually create courses at the junior level that students can enroll into if they want to kind of revisit the topic. And that has been an interesting option for some students as well. Actually take another course, actually enroll in another course as a junior, kind of follow up on the same themes. But a lot of people just get plugged into doing so. They've taken a course, they've learned a little bit about this area, this field that they're interested in, and then they can begin to do research, perhaps with that faculty member or with somebody else that they've met, or they can take other courses to explore that theme. They can go back to that person that they had as their FIG instructor and ask questions about, different scholarship opportunities or whatever it might be. We have a lot of people that take students on field trips, afterward as a part of a different course. So they kind of got to know the person well and say, I wouldn't mind, going to Europe with that person on a study abroad. So they go on something else that's not related to the FIG, but it's just a future event that they are a part of.
Nathan, you touched on a couple of really great ideas there that I'm actually going to let Connor follow up on. With the question sort of being, obviously you've talked a lot about how these courses helped shrink the university a little bit. Connor, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that. If that was one of the reasons why you decided to sign up for these classes and what it did for you, coming to a campus as large as UW-Madison. I know that a lot of students, I came from a pretty small town myself and attended a large R1 university, not Wisconsin, unfortunately, but down in the South. But, moving to that large R1 was definitely a very large university campus was definitely a little anxious for me in getting here. I'm wondering if you can talk about that, or if that wasn't true for you and students that you've had talk about that with you in your advising sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it does definitely shrink the university a little. Like I mentioned earlier, the very first class that I came to at Madison was that FIG seminar where I got to meet some of the other students in my cohort. And then moving through the rest of the semester, there were always those people there those familiar faces that I saw, all 5 days per week that first semester. And, even moving forward beyond the FIG, like Nathan had said, my spring semester of my freshman year, I think every single one of my courses had someone from my FIG in it, at least one person. So, moving into those next courses where, you don't have that familiar cohort, you still have a lot of people that you got to know really well and got to work with to, move forward within your programs. And even to this day, within the education policy certificate that I'm working towards, I still have students from my FIG that we share classes all the time.
I can add something there as well. We survey our students who graduate. So now this program, and actually I should have said this before, this program is going to be in its 20th year this fall. So this is the 20th year we've been offering FIGs at UW-Madison. So it's been around for a long time. But we now have about 900 students each May who graduate who had formerly been in a FIG, and we survey those students. And a couple things about the survey. The response rate is amazing. How many students do respond and say they want to share their experience with us is incredible. For a kind of a low stakes response, they do reply, but overwhelmingly they say things along the lines of it was really impactful in terms of their place. But more importantly, I think for a lot of students was the social relationships that they built. The number of people who say my roommate, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my best friend, it's very common for people to say they met these people that are really important to them now, 4 years later, in their FIG. So, many people create relationships in that first semester that continue to be really important for them throughout their entire time at the university. I think that's pretty common.
Great. You broke up a little bit just at the beginning there, but I think we got the gist, especially towards the end of your answer. I apologize for that. Connor, another question for you. So after your FIG, how do you feel, or in what ways did taking those first introductory courses with the small class and that sort of strong cohort, what benefits did it have in terms of preparing you to take classes later on, not just in your major, but just as being a college student more generally?
Yeah, so I guess one of the most impactful things was the ability to kind of connect with professors and faculty. Talking to a lot of students, that's almost always kind of the number one, what would you do different thing, going back to your first semester is connect with faculty. And I think the FIG program is really creates a really conducive environment to being able to learn with and also learn from your faculty. I know that towards the end of my FIG, we kind of had like a get together, I think it was the very last day of the FIG, and we actually invited not only the professors from both of our linked courses, but we also invited the TAs too. And so we got to connect with all of them all at the same time, and kind of in a unique setting where, it was this FIG that these professors had worked with, and, students that, maybe stuck out a little more because they were part of a program that was, connecting all of the ideas that each of them were teaching into one kind of, central idea.
Thanks. You obviously a very sort of self-starter, it sounds like, for yourself. I mean, do you feel like how can it help students who might be a little more apprehensive about courses? Can it help them sort of bring, especially I thinking that small 20-person or so core class? And I'll follow up with another question about, you had mentioned the TA, and some of our prospective students might not quite know what that is yet. I'll follow up with that afterwards. But just in terms of, and Nathan, you can speak to this a little bit as well, just and the push that it might be able to give some students who maybe are a little afraid to speak up in class and things like that, and what it to have for students who may feel a bit more apprehensive about starting out in that way.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the unique things about the FIG program is because you're kind of moving through the whole program with that same cohort, you gain a little familiarity and become a little more comfortable in each of those classes, because you're surrounded by people that you're surrounded by people that you have moved through this entire semester with. And also, as Nathan mentioned earlier, these FIGs are courses that, or at least the central FIG seminars are courses that these professors are really passionate about, and they're really interested in working with students to get the most out of the FIG program. So, faculty are, half the situation in getting students in connecting with students. And I think the FIG course really allows you kind of a unique setting to work with faculty and have faculty be really excited about, working with you and getting to know you on a personal level.
And the sort of go back to the question I was going to add on to that, you had mentioned a TA. So I mean, I know many years ago when I first began my undergraduate career, having no idea what that was. So a couple of questions is, for that core class, is there a TA, and this is a teaching assistant for those of you who may not be familiar, is there a TA or teaching assistant affiliated with that core class? And for the other larger lecture style classes where you're in that small discussion, what is that like? What do you actually do in those classes? And I guess to tie it into FIGS directly, how do those FIGS discussion sections differ from other ones that you've had?
Yeah, so within the main FIG course, there was a teaching assistant, and she actually just co-taught with our professor. It was almost like a tag team type deal where, one day or for half the day, Maggie would or our professor would teach a little, and then the TA would offer some insights or work with us in small groups or stuff like that. And I think that differs from how a lot of students normally interact with TAs. So in those discussion sections, the discussion sections that are paired along with all those big lectures are kind of an opportunity to scale down kind of everything that's taught and gone over in lecture, and giving students the ability to really digest what they're learning and reading and working with in a more controlled and comfortable environment. And especially because, your professor you only might interact with them within those lectures, but your TA, they're going to be the ones who are grading your paper. They'll send out weekly comments, and they're the ones who are, working with you in a smaller setting where they can also get to know you a little better as well.
Thanks very much for that. I'll throw this question to both you and Nathan. Do most people coming into FIGS know what major they're going to be doing as they move through their career? I mean, even if they change it, or do you see most students coming in as being undecided and using FIGS as a way to explore the opportunities that are out there?
So I can say from some of the students that I've worked with at SOAR so far this year, it really is a mix of both. I mean, I would say that I was an example of someone who kind of came in and chose a FIG off my intended major, but I work with plenty of students who use FIGs as an opportunity to explore something that, maybe they hadn't previously gotten the ability to explore, subjects that, they just have an interest in that can eventually open some doors into where they'd like to take their academic career.
We actually have some survey data on this question. We do surveys at the end of the semester, and it breaks down about 50-50. In other words, students who are coming in taking a FIG because they think it might be connected to an area they actually want to pursue as a potential major, and then 50% who are just exploring a topic that's of interest to them with no real connection to a specific major.
Great, thanks. So we have about 7 minutes left. Time for just a few more questions. And I want to make sure that I've got one more question here, but I want to make sure that you two have time to talk about any topics that we didn't get a chance to cover today. And Connor, I've got a big question for you to sort of close things out as well. But it's sort of a basic question just to reassure students that are watching or families that are watching as well. So do most students who enroll in a FIG, do they go on to complete their degree within their 4 years? How does it affect that 4-year plan for them?
So the impact of a FIG on 4-year graduation is actually a positive impact. There's a real complexity in terms of regression analyses to figure out what one semester did overall. But our 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year graduation rates, controlling for all kinds of variables, are actually better than the campus as a whole, the profile as a whole. So we have better fall-to-fall retention. So our GPAs are higher, our credit loads passed are higher. So in many measurable ways, it seems to have a very positive effect. So in general, because everything in a FIG does apply, because they're all fulfilling requirements, they're all real courses, it doesn't slow anybody down to take a FIG. And in many cases, because of the cohort, they learn more deeply, they feel more connected, they feel more at home at this institution because they know people and so forth, that they tend to learn a little bit better and do better as a consequence.
Connor, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Was that basically your experience and the experience of other students that you've known who have gone through through the program?
Yeah, like Nathan said, I think the ability to work with students all in the same subject for that first semester allows you to kind of ease into college life and how things work without just jumping right headfirst into it. You're working, you have a central group of students that you can go into those first midterms with, you can write those big papers with, and it allows you to set a really strong foundation in, okay, here's how to be a successful college student moving forward. And I mean, like Nathan said, that definitely can help pave some successes along the way.
Thanks very much. That sounds great. I want to make sure, are there any topics that the two of you wanted to discuss specifically today? We've got 4 minutes left in today's session. So just wanted to make absolutely sure if there's any information you wanted to get across that hasn't come up yet.
There are a couple things I just wanted to add. First, I would like to just reflect on what was just said. I think so much of what is challenging in your first semester isn't the inside of the classroom. I mean, many students have been in classrooms since they were 5 years old. So it's relatively familiar to do academic work, though it can be different and challenging. But it's all the other stuff that's going on as one starting college and kind of moving away from home often for the first time. And there's a lot of independence. And so that cohort of people can really help ground you as you're going through that process. And that can be a really important part of just feeling comfortable and learning as just a part of that. So a couple of things I just wanted to mention. At UW-Madison, we have a variety of learning communities. So you'll hear the term learning community used in different ways. The primary alternative to FIGs is the residential learning communities, which are based in housing. We've got a whole bunch of them, I think 11 this fall. The difference is that FIGs have nothing to do with housing. You can live wherever you want, with whoever you want, and be in a FIG. It is completely an academic program. So it's unique in that sense of the offerings of learning communities we have on our campus. It's a purely academic program. So there is no affiliation with housing. Your roommate can be in a FIG or a different FIG, no FIG, it doesn't make any difference. You can be in URS, you can be in honors, you can be in many of these other programs. You can be in a residential learning community and be in a FIG. So we encourage students to think about doing multiple things that they're interested in doing. You don't have to choose one, you can do as many as you want, as long as it makes sense for you and your particular circumstance. The other thing I'll just add is there's no other cost or additional fee associated with being in a FIG. So being in a FIG is just, the fees and tuition that you pay covers your costs, and anything that's additional that takes place within the FIG is paid for by the program, not by the student who's participating, except for study abroad, which is a separate thing. But a trip to Chicago, wherever it might be, that's typically picked up by us.
Thanks so much. So we've got 2 minutes left. Connor, I'm going to let you take it to the end. So the question I have for you is, you've been through this, you've been through a couple of years of your career here at UW-Madison. If you had to go back and tell your first semester self some advice or questions you wish you had asked at the time, what would that be?
Yeah, so I guess if I could go back, I would encourage myself to kind of, get a little more involved with professors and, inquire about research projects or inquire about, things that they're working on or more classes that they're taking. I think that, the FIG allowed me to be able to reach out to professors and, get letters of recommendation and, have a conversation about, the topic beyond class or something like that. But really, I mean, a lot of the professors at Madison, they're leaders in their field of a lot of the subjects that they're teaching, and they really have a lot of opportunities to grow outside of the classroom and help students work, in that capacity. I know that, Maggie, who taught my FIG, teaches a lot of graduate courses and does a lot of, study abroad programs too. So there's opportunities that, that might come later too, that still are really good to look into.
Thanks very much for that. I think that's probably a good place to start today. Connor and Nathan, I want to thank you so much for being such great advocates for the FIGS program and for the College of Letters and Science, obviously, and for UW-Madison as a whole. Thank you both today for participating in this. For those of you watching out there, we will be back tomorrow afternoon with another Ask Me Anything with the Writing Center, so be sure to tune in at 3:30 for that. Thanks so much. Take care and have a great afternoon.